Can you tell me your name, please?
Boy, I didn't know these questions were going to be that tough. Holy smoke. My name is Dick Trimingham.
No, Richard H. Trimingham.
Oh, Richard H. Trimingham.
Yes, the formal.
Commonly referred to, a.k.a. Dick Trimingham.
Okay, and what is your date of birth and where were you born?
My date of birth is 27 August 1922, and I was born in the small but great town of Sunol, S-U-N-O-L, California, which is about 35 miles east of San Francisco.
And what were your parents' names?
Parents' name was John. He didn't have a middle name, and he was born in 1870. My mother's name was Alice. Her middle initial was Pete. She had the odd middle name of Priest, and of course her maiden name was Chamberlain. And she was born in 1884.
And what year did you join the Army?
It
were you drafted?
It was the Army, and it was the Army Air Corps, and I joined it on the 9th of November 1940.
So you joined the Army, then you volunteered?
It was in the Air Corps. It
Okay.
was the Army Air Corps. I went to Hamilton Field.
And which bomber group were you with?
Well, I didn't get in the bomber group till 43, and that was the 465th Bomber Group, and I was in the 783rd Squadron.
And when did you enter the war in Germany?
Entered the war. We went and from North Africa, Tunisia, to Italy. So I guess we entered the war in, that would have to be in the beginning of 1944.
And you were a POW?
Yes.
And can you tell us about that? How that came to
Well,
happen?
that came about because I was on a volunteer mission to make up some missions I'd lost with the crew. I wanted to finish with the crew, so I dislocated my little finger, and I couldn't fly for a couple of missions, so I volunteered for this mission with the operations officer because I thought, shoot, he'd know whether it was a milk run or not. But it turned out he picked out a stupid airplane, one that had the wing change. We had one silver wing and the rest of the plane was painted OD. And we got over, went over the Adriatic into the European peninsula and went over Yugoslavia and got in Czechoslovakia. And I'm trying to think, one engine went out. And if one engine went out in a B-24, it wasn't like a B-17. The pilot told the bombardier to salvo the bombs. So he salvoed the bombs, and for some reason or another, the bomb bay wasn't completely open, so it broke the doors down. And the door wasn't completely open, and so the bombardier was Bill Sheridan, who was on our regular crew. I knew him well. And he came back there and was trying to get rid of one or two of the bombs that were still laying on the bomb thing. And it turned out it was kind of fortunate because only one of the bomb doors were open. The other one was closed. But this one, if the bombs fell on it and it was open, so we used that to bail out of because it was knocked open. And so we're just trying to decide what to do, and we figured that the groups that were going to the mission to Pardubice is where we were going, they would be coming back over here, so we'd just go over there and join up with them for safety because we only had. Now when we're going out there, a squadron of German, two squadrons, one squadron of 190s and one squadron of 109s jumped us and started coming in and shooting at us. And they killed our tail gunner on one of the first passes, and this left him open from the rear because of the two rudders on a B-24 at the top turret couldn't shoot until they came out from behind the rudder. That was me. And Wastus, which was flying in the ball turret, he was either injured or killed. Anyway, his ball turret wasn't working either. So they just had an open run. And I couldn't shoot at him because of the left rear rudder. So I looked down and I had about 75 rounds of 50 caliber left. And I finally figured out, well, what I'll do is I'll just set my guns where he's coming out on his pass from the left rudder, and I'll just, so when he comes out, I just turned my guns on and he flew through it. Well, I must have hit a control surface because he never pulled out and took off part of our left wing. And this panicked the pilot, and the pilot in his deposition to that kid in Czechoslovakia said he took off our left wing, but he didn't really. He only took off about 3 foot. But he said, let's get out of here, which we might as well, because the second engine was out anyway, and our right rear tail was destroyed because a piece of cowling off one of the engines flew back and took that off. And we were flopping around in nowhere. It was a turkey shoot, and we were the turkeys, and we weren't going to be able to. So he just said bail out, and so I scrambled and got my chute, which I didn't have on. It was a chest pack, and got that thing, and went over and to the bomb bay where Bill Sheridan was standing looking down, and I was saying, for God's sake, get the hell out of here, you know. And finally Bill jumped, and then I went and stood there and looked, and I thought, oh my. And then finally I got the courage to jump. It's like being on the end of a 30-foot diving board looking at a cold pool for the first time, you know. And anyway, I was lit at the side of a little lake, which was lucky because the chest pack is only a 23-foot chute, and you land hard. And it was kind of muddy at the edge of this lake, and three guys came out from the town. One was the mayor, and he had a pistol, late model pistol, and there was a young kid with a double-barrel shotgun, and it was cocked, you know. I presume it was loaded, and he had it aimed at my middle section, and he was shaking like a leaf, you know. There was an old man with a stick that came out, and he was trying to hit me with a stick, but the guy with the pistol pushed him back, and I pointed at the guy with the shotgun cocked, and the guy with the pistol made him uncock the shotgun, because where was I going to go in the middle of Czechoslovakia? So they took me into a house, and overnight I stayed there with a guy guarding me with a shotgun. A 20-year-old kid being guarded with a shotgun with a ripped pair of coveralls struck me as overkill. But anyway, the next day I was picked up by the brown shirts and driven to a town called Budweis, which is no longer there.
The brown shirts were the Germans?
Yeah, brown shirts were the Germans. And in a convertible Mercedes. That's the first time I ever rode in a Mercedes. I was in the back seat. And we went and we got put in a jail. And then we were transferred out of a strange thing happened. The next took us out of the jail for a little walk, and and it was kind of sunny, and they put us up against a white washed cement or brick wall. And I thought, golly, they're going to shoot us, because I'd seen the movies, where that's what they did. But they weren't. They were just letting us get in the sun. Then took us back to the jail. And the jail had decent food. I thought, this isn't too bad. The food was pretty good, And then they took us we got on a train and went to Vienna on a train and went through down the Rhine Valley, and we were headed toward a prison camp in the western part of Germany, but they turned around and, oh no, wait a minute, we went on the train to the interrogation section in Frankfurt, where we were interrogated. But we weren't interrogated that much because at that time so many people were being shot down, they just didn't have time to spend with everybody. And so we stayed at Dulag Luft, which was full of fleas. I never saw so many fleas in my life. I had flea bites all over me. And then we got on another train and we were going to West Germany, but the British were starting to advance, so they changed it and we went off to East Germany up in the Polish corridor about 80 miles north of Stettin, which I don't even know they call Stettin anymore. They changed a lot of names in those places. And we stayed there about 6 months, and then the Russians started their advance, and so in the latter part of January or the first part of February, I forget which, during the winter of 44-45, they marched us out to march us west, because German prisoner guards, and none of the Germans wanted to be captured by the Russians. And because the Russians were very hard on them, the Germans were very hard on the Russian prisoners too. And I've seen instances of that. So, did you know that our squadron commander was Burton C. Andrews? He later stayed in the Air Force and rose to the rank of colonel. But his father was Burton C. Andrews Sr., who was a military policeman in the Army and in charge of the American sector of the Nuremberg prison camp. And one of his prisoners was Hermann Goering, who committed suicide, but his father told him Hermann Goering was a homosexual. I don't know whether he wants his son that thing or not, but Hermann Goering was a swish. And anyway, we were on this march, and they didn't feed us very much, and put us up in barns a lot of the times, but a few times we were just out in laying down on the side of the road for the night. And that march, we were in the march about 2 months, and we were on a farm, and I kicked a pig, and some German farmer was slopping his hogs, I guess they weren't pigs, or hogs, with cooked potatoes. And they hadn't been washed, the potatoes, but I kicked a hog in the face and stole a potato from him and peeled it, but I didn't peel it clean, so I got dysentery. And for some reason, other people got dysentery. They put us in a barn because we couldn't walk. We were just bad. And then we were in that barn for about a week, and they found some boxcars to put us in, and we were crammed in a boxcar where we had to be crammed with our legs. We couldn't stand like this in a boxcar, passing around a cardboard box to relieve ourselves with, which later became such a soggy mess that nobody wanted to touch it. You just forget about it. And then took us to, unloaded us to a camp in Fallingbosel, which was an army camp. And we stayed there about 2 weeks, and we got about 6 ounces of dehydrated soup a day. But this, we didn't, well, on this boxcar, we were in this boxcar for 3 days, and they only let us out twice, and that was to get snow for water to drink. So they let us out of that thing. So in Fallingbosel, we were there for about 2 weeks, and then the British started their drive, and of course they marched us out of there, but slowly, because they wanted to be captured by the British and not march us over to where the Russians would capture us. So after about, I have no idea of the time, but it seemed to me about a month, we just came to a complete stop, and we were able to steal potatoes out of a potato cellar to cook and eat. And we were strafed by the Royal Air Force, a RAF. When we were cooking potatoes, we all ran and hid in a barn and behind rocky things. Nobody was hit. And then we left that and we started walking back towards the west, to the western lines, to the British. And then one day we're just sitting there and the British tanks came over and we were liberated. And so we jumped, somebody hooked a couple of horses to a wagon, we jumped on that and started traveling back the road where the tanks came from. And we went over a hill and encountered a German half-track which had escaped, and it pointed a gun at us, so we jumped off the wagon and started walking, and got to some British camp where they fed us a little bit, mostly gooseberry jelly, which was jam, which was on the table, and then flew us into Brussels, Belgium, where we were given British uniforms and a good meal and a bed. And that was the end of the story.
Well, we appreciate you sharing that with
Well,
us. And,
How much weight did you lose when you're on the?
I weighed 92 pounds when they weighed me in the British camp. They weighed me at a scale that was a metric scale, but they converted it. I weighed 92 pounds.
Did any of the prisoners die that you were with?
Say that again?
Did any of the prisoners die that you were with along the way on your march?
Yeah, but it's been reported, and there's a congressional report that some, I think he was a Senator Warren from somewhere in Virginia or someplace, that he got from somebody that said a lot of people died, but a lot of people didn't die on that march. Maybe 15 or 20 is all that died on that march from pneumonia or one thing or another. One British guy I know was in our barn. He hit, and I was on a wagon with him. They were going to take us sickies and put us in a camp nearby. But the camp nearby, when we're sitting there in the cart, they took out 12 or 14 coffins. They were black coffins. I remember that, black boxes. And they had a typhus epidemic. So they took us back to the barn. And from the barn we went to the railroad train where we were with the dysentery guys. But he was sitting, and my leg was sitting there, and I'm looking at, we're like zombies, you know. And I said to him, you better move your leg, and because it's going to freeze. And he didn't move it, and he later got gangrene, and he was in the barn, and if anybody made any movement noise, he would scream and holler like heck. And I don't know what happened to him, but I'm sure he had to have his leg amputated at least.
What about the other guys that were in the plane with you? Do you know what happened to them?
Well, two of them were killed in the plane. The tail turret gunny and the ball turret gunner. And the ball turret gunner was a guy named Len Wastus. And when I went out to the plane, it was a pickup mission, and I was a volunteer, and I said, where am I supposed to fly? And they said, ball turret. And I said, ball turret? I don't want to fly in a ball turret. I said, they had a Sperry sight. I don't know how to operate that, anything to get out. And Len says, I'll take the ball turret. So Len took the ball turret. He's now buried over in Czechoslovakia. So I thank Len for that.
Wow.
You were lucky.
Oh, you're lucky. So how lucky can you get?
Well, you know,
I didn't get a scratch.
well,
I-
considering.
Yeah.